moving from folding phones, we are going to the Pixel tablet. Now it's just been in the hands of reviewers and vloggers, and we've gotten some first impressions of the device. Some people have actual hands on it now, I guess, and I guess more reviews than anything. And it's a decent device. It's a decent tablet. I think, especially looking at the price that it was introduced at, no one expected it to, completely blow iPads out of the water. But it's a good mid-range tablet. It's not impressive, in terms of specs. It's not impressive in terms of performance because it's running the Tensor G2 chip, which is the chip that powers their Pixel 7s, 7 Pro, 7A. So it's not like it's a super powered chip they just developed for this tablet. So, expectations were to be tempered when this was announced from the first place.
Mhm.
Speaker, not the greatest on the device. And then even, one of the big things about it was when they had the demonstration, when they showed it off, okay, it comes with this speaker dock. You can attach it to it magnetically. It essentially becomes a Google Nest device and it has a better speaker for when you're listening to things. The speaker actually, from what I've heard, isn't that great. It adds a little bit of bass, but it doesn't really get that much louder. So the equivalent is, I think they were saying like a Nest Hub Mini, which is, for the size of the speaker and what you would expect, probably something bigger.
Mhm.
But moving on from that, it also doesn't come with an additional charger. So the only way you can charge it straight out of the box is this magnetic charging dock, which is cool, but it is low. So it's probably like I think a 5 to 10 watt charging speed, which means from 0 to 100 would take like 4.5 hours on this dock. If that's the only way you're charging it, hopefully you have some USB Cs laying around. But the saving grace of this is the software is clean. It's coming from Google, the makers of Android. And from what I've seen and the reviews that I've seen, people seem to be very impressed with how they've handled tablets because they've moved on from the Pixel phones and they've expanded things. So they're very impressed with the software on the tablet, sort of the extra functionality they've built into the tablet. And one thing that is, I guess, I never thought of, but is definitely something good to have is the multi-user support.
Yeah.
So iPads don't have this. I mean, I guess I never shared my iPad with anyone, so I never noticed. But it is very simple to set up multi-user support. So whether it's you and a sibling sharing a tablet, or maybe you have kids that you're sharing the tablet with, to give them their own essentially like section of the tablet so that you don't have, you're not sharing accounts and your kid can't, spend $30,000 on Roblox accidentally. So what they've done with the actual tablet software is compelling. The specs, the performance, not the most compelling, not top end. You're not going to be editing videos on this thing, but the software is compelling. I guess one more downside, there aren't a lot of apps that are optimized for this new tablet. Yes, okay, if you look at Google Calendar, if you look at, Gmail, Google Chrome, those are obviously, first party apps. They're optimized for the bigger size of this tablet, but a lot of apps that you have on this, a lot of Android apps are just they're just phone apps that are blown up to sort of fit the device, and then you have a lot of wasted space on it. So, the one compelling thing about Apple is developers will essentially automatically optimize their apps for Apple tablets because they know that, hey, there's a lot of people that have Apple tablets, that have iPads, all the way from the first generation to the 10th generation. There's Pros, there's Airs. So a lot of things are optimized. Surprisingly, still not like Instagram for whatever reason, it's not optimized for iPads or tablets in general. But the ecosystem is a bit lacking. So I guess my question to you, what you've seen of the reviews and being someone who uses an Android tablet, right? Do you think this tablet, this Pixel tablet, is a compelling re-entry into the tablet space for Google? And do you think that, okay, now that Google, the makers of Android, are actually making their own tablet, do you think that encourages developers to say, hey, Google, pretty big company, has some more skin in the game? They're going to be putting out a product. There's a Pixel phones do, decently well. So if this tablet does well too, then we're going to get more bang for our buck in terms of optimizing apps for tablets on Android. I suppose, okay, Apple, we know we're going to get millions of people. Android, we're not so sure. Do you think that this is compelling, and do you think it makes the app space better, or do you think that developers are still going to be cagey when it comes to, optimizing apps and making sure that they're utilizing the full screen size of these devices?
I honestly don't know. Me in particular, I find that almost every app I use on a day-to-day basis is optimized. I've never really come across many apps where I'm like, oh, this looks like a phone app blown up. But then again, I don't use social media, so I don't know what apps a lot of these reviewers are using. Maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's TikTok, I don't know. But I don't use those apps, so that's not something I've ever come across. If I'm using something like League Pass or um, YouTube or the web browser or file manager, all of them, the apps I generally use are optimized for tablets. So yeah,
Are they Samsung apps?
and Samsung apps as well. Yeah, all integrated Samsung apps are optimized for tablets as well. So yeah, I don't come across apps really ever that I'm like, oh, this looks like a phone app blown up. Now, I'm sure there are a ton of them because let's say, for example, you're using, I don't know, like a flashlight app. It's a utility. You don't really need it to be optimized for a tablet. You're just pressing a button to turn on the flashlight and then turn it off. Who cares? Um, so I don't know. Maybe that's a situation. But when it comes to this tablet in particular, I'm a little mixed on it because I think the idea is fantastic. I love the idea of what Google is trying to do here, and some of the things I think they've done really well, like implementing the multiple user support. This is weird because that was something that was integrated into Android a long time ago, but just no one ever uses, or I think maybe was removed. But I remember even using on a Huawei phone, so I don't know if maybe this was just a Huawei feature, but multiple users was a thing that you can select from the lock screen. I even remember Google talking about this in an IO years ago, where you could select a user from a lock screen, and then that just went away. I think that's great. I'm glad that's coming back. But overall, I think what you mentioned has to do a lot with the finer details and the execution. Something that Apple is really good at is making sure that every little fine detail is ironed out properly. And Google didn't do that here. And I think that's a huge misstep considering the fact that this tablet isn't a cheap tablet. It's not like the Nexus 7 where it's like, oh, this is the cheapest tablet that you can get. So you're not worried about those little small details. This is still a pretty high priced tablet at around $500. So with that being the case, I don't think they could have done things like, okay, it charges really slow on the dock. Why? Why would you make a tablet that charges really slow on the dock? That's not a good decision to make. Or, oh, the speaker isn't great. Well, then that was the whole point of this device, right? You
Yeah.
dock it so that you can get better sound from this speaker. Well, it should be great. And even things like the port selection. There's no headphone jack on this. Which is, if this is a tablet, this isn't a tablet that's designed to use for drawing. It's not a tablet that's designed to use to edit videos and stuff like that. This is designed to consume content, watch Netflix. What sense does it make to have a tablet that you're going to be watching Netflix and all this stuff with and not have the option for a headphone jack? Like, it's just stuff like that I'm like, this was a great idea that Google just didn't execute. And then going back to the dock, reviewers have talked about the dock isn't even really that stable. And
Hmm.
one of the really cool things that I mentioned about the switching accounts, and like you mentioned, that could be like, oh, you have your kid's account. One thing Tal mentioned was that with their kids, it's like it's hard for them to like get the tablet on properly. So it's like it's flopping around. They could drop it and stuff like that. And it's like that's at what point did someone not think, okay, this needs to be done better? Even if it was just like a situation where the dock was a little bit heavier so that it couldn't be pushed around so easily. Yeah, so this is a tablet I was really excited about. I think when we talked about when it was first revealed last year at I/O, I was like, yeah, this is a fantastic idea. I think Google's gonna like really impress a lot of people with this thing, and I think they kind of whiffed a bit. That being said, the idea that this is a tablet that's also a home hub, fantastic idea. It's
Hmm.
just a great idea, and it makes me wonder, well, Apple released that feature with the iPhone where if like you dock it on like a magnetic holder, it turns into like a clock.
Yeah.
Why not bring that feature to an iPad and bring an iPad dock out? And you pretty much defeated this in every possible way with
Hmm.
that one little feature. Or Samsung. I would love to see Samsung's take on this idea. Um, and I think they would probably execute a lot better. But still, despite all that, I think if this came at a cheaper price, maybe at like the 329 price with the dock, I would be like, yeah, this is a cool device that you can have in your home. I think it's probably better at around the 299 price, personally. But yeah, it's a cool idea. I think the execution was just a little bit they missed. But I don't know. How do you feel about this? As so, this is from like a Samsung tablet user where they have a bunch of tablets at different price points that I feel like beat out this tablet for cheaper in a lot of ways. But from an iPad user, how do you feel about this Pixel tablet? Do you agree with me? Do you think like maybe they mishandled this a bit, or do you think this was the right way to go in terms of differentiating themselves from all the other tablets out there? Because there's really nothing else out there like this.
Yeah. It's difficult. I would say same with you. When I first saw it, I was I was definitely excited by the whole speaker docking system. That looked really cool to me. Um, I think even okay, if you go back even further to when they just showed it and they didn't actually go over any software, go over any, specs or pricing or anything. I was a little bit okay, this screen is decent size, but these bezels are massive and they're white, so it makes the screen look that much worse. It looks like it was designed in 2015,
Yeah.
right? So I would say off the bat, I wasn't impressed with the design. And then when they showed the whole docking system, I was impressed because it's like, okay, maybe the bezels aren't that bad. And then when you dock it, it's essentially a Nest Hub, and it looks exactly like a Nest Hub, except you can remove the screen and use it as a tablet. That's pretty cool
Yeah.
functionally, and it charges while it does it, and it's a speaker. Those were all very compelling things, right? And then even when they came out with the pricing, so I think this device is 499.
Yes.
They're selling the speaker dock separately for 130. And in MKBHD's review, he actually said the speaker is overpriced for how bad it is. If you think of, okay, it's 130 for the speaker, which means it's what 369 for the tablet. So the tablet's like if you think about just the tablet by itself, that's pretty reasonably priced. I definitely don't think you're gonna get what you say 329 for the tablet and speaker. No way they're doing that. But the tablet is reasonably priced for a mid-range Android tablet, I would say. But for the speaker to cost 130, which is more than a Nest Hub Mini, and the sound quality is essentially the same as a Nest Hub Mini, that's it's way overpriced for me. And I would expect for me to really recommend this to people, I would want a better speaker. I would want a much better speaker. Especially as you said, this is going to be like a entertainment device. People are going to be watching either, like Netflix or YouTube on it, or maybe you're going to have your kids watching Netflix or YouTube on it. It should definitely get louder than it does.
Mhm.
And I hope that I know if there's a second iteration of this device, I hope that they don't cancel it in the typical Google fashion. But if there's a second iteration, the speaker should be at least twice as good as it is right now. And yes, it should be heavier in some sort of way so that it's easier to dock, or at least make the docking situation a lot better than it is now.
Yeah.
As a coming from an Apple tablet, coming from an iPad, it's not really compelling for me because I guess the stuff that I use a tablet for, it's not really good at,
Hmm.
right? Especially when it comes to note taking. Like I'm someone who is very fond of the keyboard attachment for my tablet. And at least at the moment, there's no first party, accessory like that. I don't even know if there's going to be third party accessories because who knows, what kind of numbers they're going to do with this tablet. So it might not be worth it for someone to manufacture an accessory just for this device. But if I'm getting this tablet just so it can be a Nest Hub, a Nest Hub at home, then yeah, it's not really compelling for me.
Yeah. I mean, there is the option with this device, and I've seen a few videos. I might post some of the best ones I've seen in the description, where it can still use stuff like Bluetooth keyboards and stuff like that. And there's this one cool setup that I've seen where it's like the tablet on its dock, and then in front of the dock is like a keyboard and like a little mouse and stuff like that. So it can kind of be like, okay, you kind of just want it could just be in the living room. Someone needs to Google something quickly. It's there. They log into their account. Someone else wants to go watch something. So it's very versatile. But
Mhm.
still, like, this is $500 US, $700 Canadian. It's not a cheap device. So it's like, I feel like it doesn't live up. As much as you say, like, the $329 price might not be, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it's worth the price that they're charging for it. I think it is
Mhm.
overpriced, especially, and I don't think there's a couple things they could do. They could either make the product better, or they should have made the product better, or they should have made it cheaper. Like you mentioned, the dock doesn't do anything when the tablet isn't connected. Why is this not a Google Home when the tablet's not connected? Like, that doesn't
Mhm.
make any sense. The Google Homes are so cheap, just integrated into this. But one thing that this did get me thinking, and you could tell me if I'm crazy for thinking this, seeing like the setup with like a keyboard and a mouse, and it's kind of almost like a desktop computer, it made me think Apple should do this with the iMac. They should make the iMac like a removable kind of screen, have a battery in it. There's so much empty space in that thing, anyways. So people can just take around and use it to watch a movie and then just dock it back. Maybe they could do it with a smaller version, like a, you know, 21-inch version or something like that. But I don't know. This device, I think this is giving me the wrong impression. It should give me the impression of what we saw originally, of like, oh, this is really cool. Really excited to see what this is. But instead, it's just getting me thinking, I wish other companies would take this idea because they probably do it better.
Mhm. I could definitely see Apple doing something like that and it being compelling, but definitely I don't see that size working,
Mm,
especially for a tablet, right? It's supposed to be more convenient, and I don't know. I don't think there's any manufacturers that can make a 21 or a 20-inch tablet easy to carry around and easily to transport.
yeah.
What I could see them doing is for their next generation of their iPad Pros, which is supposed to be some sort of redesign. I could see them going with a 14 and 16 inch
Mm,
to match the MacBook Pros. And they have Stage Manager, they have all these desktop apps that they brought. They finally brought Final Cut to the iPad, right? I could see them having some sort of dock, like you said, that turns an iPad essentially into a desktop,
yeah.
right? 100% I could see that, especially if you get to a 14 or 16-inch tablet, and then that's still like it's definitely on the bigger side, but I could see them making one that's at least easy enough to carry around, and especially because it's I'm doing air quotes, pro device. Most tablets, people are going to give them to their kids to hold or play games on or Roblox or watch YouTube on, right? I mean, I'm going to say that nobody will, but I'm sure there's definitely people that have iPad Pros that just give them to their 3-year-olds to watch stuff on. But most people who have an iPad Pro, I would imagine, wouldn't do that.
Mhm.
So you don't have to worry about a 3-year-old, dropping this 14-inch tablet, or even just a 3-year-old struggling to maneuver this 14-inch tablet. So I could see them. I think that would be very compelling, and I would agree. If Apple does that with their iPads and they have some sort of dock-in stand that, like, oh yeah, you dock this and it charges it and it instantly connects to these Bluetooth accessories, yeah, this Pixel tablet's dead in the water. Especially with how good iPad or just how good Apple speakers are in general, I think they could completely destroy this thing.
And I just want to bring up another thing that you mentioned here, because I would also love to see Samsung take a stab at this. But you mentioned multitasking. It's crazy to me. Dex has existed for I don't know how long. And this tablet can still only run two apps side by side. An iPad can do more than that. And we've talked about iPad multitasking not being where it needs to be for ages now. So I don't know. It sounds like I'm kind of down on this device, which I am a little bit, but it doesn't make any sense to me of like, this is supposed to be Google. They're supposed to be making the best of the best, and this is not it. It's just not it.
Are they? I feel like Google makes like the mid of the
Yeah,
mid.
true. Well,
I feel like there's nothing that Google has done that is premium,
That's
right?
good. That's
Successfully, at
true.
least.
Yeah.
It's always the mid of the mid.
Yeah. Well, they're living up to their expectations then.
They are. So, okay, from a second generation Pixel tablet, even though like I don't think the first is technically out yet, from a second generation, what would you want to see to make it compelling?
Um, Cheaper price, better speaker dock, and a headphone jack. I
Mm.
think this is the thing. It's just
No headphone. It's 2023. There's no headphone
I swear
jacks.
even iPads have
It's never
headphone
coming
jacks.
back. No, they
Oh, they
don't.
don't. Oh, geez. Okay.
No.
Um, okay. To me, it's just what baffles me about this device. It's the small things that they just decided to ignore. So it's like the
Mhm.
fact that it's the speaker dock isn't a Google Home when the tablet's not connected. It's the fact that the speakers aren't even great. And it's the fact that, you know, the docking mechanism isn't even great. It's little things like that. To me, it's just make sure that those little points are done properly, especially when that's the whole idea around your device. Maybe make sure you've done that properly before you release it. And I think that's where I am with it. I think all they need to do is kind of not perfect, just do the purpose of this device properly, which they didn't do here. And I think that's an easy change for them to make, which is why I feel like it's wide open for competitors to do this, because it's not hard to make this device better than what the Pixel tablet is.
Yeah.
Is there a feature that you would personally love to see?
Personally, I would say yeah. The speaker, especially if it's going to be included with the device and be a selling point of the device, it needs to be more robust and needs to be easier to dock. You should charge faster too,
Yeah.
especially if it's the only charger that you're including with this thing. The dock needs to be better if they're going to have that as a focal point for the next one. And I would say processor. Like, I get the whole appeal of, okay, the tensor chip is powering everything from your tablets to your mid-range phone, your high-end phone, and your budget phone. I get the appeal of that from a manufacturing standpoint, but they should have a higher powered if it's a Tensor, G3 Pro or G3X, there should be a little bit more oomph behind the processor for your tablet,
Yeah.
in my opinion. So I guess the two things I would say would be, or okay, I'll say three things: dock, better processor, better multitasking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, yeah, I don't know how Samsung has had DeX for so long and no one is even comparable to it.
It's
I
crazy.
don't know. There's have to be some sort of patents or something that's restricting everybody else from ripping it off. But I don't know how they've been so dominant in that for so
You
long.
know what's the funny part? It's built into Android. Having Windows that you can just move around is built into Android.
Mhm.
You can enable it in a lot of devices developer options. But for some reason, Google just doesn't want to do it, which is dumb. Like Dex has proven that it's a great feature. People love it. I use it all the time. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's just stubbornness at this point.
Yeah.